Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out Confession. Story 1. I was forced to steal a book in high school and covered it up, then did nothing when another person was blamed. When I was in high school we had gym class and most of the class were doing sport and stuff. At the end when we returned to the changing rooms we saw two classmates were already there, but we didn't think anything of it. We changed our clothes, and while I was packing my clothes in my backpack I noticed it was kinda overstuffed, but I shook it off as me not remembering it correctly. We moved to the next class, which I'm not sure which one it was. As the class started, a person reported their physics textbook being stolen by someone during gym class, as gym class was the first class we had that day. The professor then had us show our physics textbook to the classmate as he could recognize it. They started from the beginning of the classroom and went to the back of it. I was sitting almost at the back. As they began I didn't really think much of it because I know I didn't take mine because it was so bulky and my backpack could hold so much and that my friend would let me look at his. However, guess what I remember to noticed in my backpack as I was putting in my gym clothes earlier? Yes, it was a physics textbook. I started to panic internally. I didn't do anything wrong, but if I get caught I would be in super trouble and would have everyone look at me as the quiet kid who has a secret agenda rather than the quiet kid who is just quiet. The textbook was in my backpack and I had to think of something. So a thought came to me: if I damage the front cover a bit secretly, I could get away with it. As I was sitting with my backpack opened right behind me, I bent my arm behind my back and reached in the backpack and then torn a bit of the cover. When the kid came to check it he said it wasn't his. That was a huge relief. Later on that day and even months later, the kid who had his textbook stolen kept blaming one of the troublemaking kids in the class for it, and I never said anything about it. All I could do was just look and not comment on it. I still have a leftover physics textbook at home. We usually return them every year since we don't pay for them, we just borrow them from the school. The kid whose textbook was stolen had to pay for his missing textbook. Alright, here is what I think happened. The two classmates who were in the changing room before everyone else were studying for the test that day, but since they were one of the cool kids who only brought a single notebook and pen to school, they had no book to look from, so they took one from any of the available backpacks in the changing rooms. Please note that the changing rooms are not under surveillance, so none knows what happens there, and we just gotta trust our classmates not to steal. And once these classmates were done they didn't remember where they got it from, so they placed it in mine as I was the second best in grades and a person who did their schoolwork regularly and all that. It also made sense it was mine since I didn't have mine in my backpack that day. If I were to say the book somehow got in my backpack but didn't report it earlier, then that would be a bit sketchy. I mean, it was 8 in the morning when gym ended and I wasn't fully awake to remember I didn't bring my textbook that day. Story 2. I hired a lawsuit against my parents and moved in with my neighbors. My parents never really loved me from the start. They had my sister a few days after I was born and turned all their attention to her. They don't even give a damn crap about the fact that I have disorders that actually requires attention, like my schizophrenia and my anorexia. My sister was only diagnosed with ADHD and my parents treat her like she's dying. When I have attention from them she'll start to act up and my parents will start to bring her everything she asks for. They even ignored me when I was having a literal panic attack in front of the whole church choir because my sister hurt her finger by purposely slamming it against a door. When I was 6 I was traumatized enough to the point the school had a senior student watch my every move to make sure I didn't try to commit or anything. They banned me from using any sharp objects or toys that would make me go insane. They even had a special code for when my disorders acted up. I was matured by age 8 and frequently visited my counselor, who promised not to tell my parents about what I say. By the time I was 9 my parents took me out of school and isolated me because my sister's new school was at least $500 to get in. They didn't let me outside, they didn't let me eat, and they didn't let me talk to other family members. When my other family asks me a question I just went to my room because if I said something they would surely punish me after. Around 13 years old, I basically looked like a skeleton. I was bones and all, and I didn't even care about what my parents had left over. My isolation was still on and I didn't get the right amount of education I needed. I didn't know what photosynthesis was or who Christopher Columbus was. Their attention towards my sister rose to the point they didn't even care that I was gone. I went to my neighbor house and told them everything that happened at home and they agreed to take care of me when my parents couldn't. Since my parents were always out, they would buy me everything I asked for and even made the guest room in their house my very own room. When I turned 16 they bought me the truck I've always wanted, and when my parents found out that our neighbors had been providing my every need, they proceeded to punish me severely by putting a shock collar on me and activating it whenever I tried to contact my neighbors. The time I finally went back to school was when I was 18. I didn't really know the basics, so the school organized a very specific class for me where I would be taught by a professional. I managed to get a full-ride scholarship to Princeton University and saved up a lot of money. I became a marine biologist when I was 25 and I got a lot of dollars from it. Just a few months ago I hired a lawyer and erased my parents from my information and replaced it with my neighbors because my parents basically disowned me when I was 17. When I found out that my neighbors had died, I was given their inheritance and planned their funeral. My parents and my sister showed up begging for forgiveness and for money, but I had them removed by the church security guards. About a few weeks ago I hired a lawsuit against them and now I'm going to court to have them sued. Even my sister. Story 3. I flashed some builders on the way home from work. Roughly a month ago, I was driving home from work when I stopped at a red light. A van with a couple of builders pulled alongside me. They seemed to be joking around looking at me. I made eye contact with the passenger, who was pretty good looking, who mouthed to me. Flash with a cheeky wink afterwards. I'm not sure what came over me, but I felt excited and a little turned on for some reason. I turned away for a second to think, then looked back at them. I lifted up my top with both hands, I didn't have a bra on, and flashed them for a few seconds before smiling. The light turned green a moment later and I drove off. I was pretty excited as I drove home. I thought it would be a fun little secret, however I've been debating over the last week if I need to tell my boyfriend. We've been together over 3 years now and I do see a future with him. I feel slightly guilty as I'm not sure he would find it funny or take it badly. Story 4. Made a mistake at leaving this life and am now in limbo 3 weeks later. On November 30th, after careful planning and preparation, I, 4am, failed in my attempt to die. For more than 12 months I've been trying to live after I decided in 2022 that I wanted to die. In October 2023 I concluded definitely that I want to die. I'm married for 18Y with 3 daughters and co-own a couple of businesses we started after exiting successful corporate career of 23Y. Dying was something I communicated since Oct to my wife. I made the decision and commitment that my death won't be a trauma event, shooting/hanging etc., linked to discovery of my body. I found the right medicine to achieve the outcome required. A simple go-to-sleep medicine. I asked friends whom I had confided in to help my wife after my death with running the businesses, making decisions, and setting my wife and kids up for a better life after my death. We spent a couple of hours together before November 30th where they asked me details relating to the businesses and how my wife wanted to be helped to enable them all to help my wife after 30 Nov. She was in the session as well. I've been socially distant in home life. I didn't want to partake in fun events and was happy to be left alone in house full of people. We did not want my kids to know at this point in their lives I decided to die and started explaining how my blood pressure and heart was giving DRS concern, trying to lay path of heart attack as cause of death to them. I've been diagnosed with depression, 30Y, and refused to be exposed to treatments that artificially make me come across as happy. I believe in being authentic and chemical/medicine treatment alters me perhaps in the most respectful way possible. It is similar to me refusing treatment for terminal illness. I just don't want treatment. I have a strong, do not resuscitate, living will form in case medical decisions must be made. In my life I've had sleep therapy, shock therapy, range of different antidepressants and anxiety medicines, natural treatments, and even with these fully amped up, I rationally and cognitively decided to die and communicated this to my close friends and wife. I confirmed with my financial advisor that all financial instruments are in good standing and my wife will have millions to start new life. I spend 2-3 weeks preparing with her what that life could look like and how embracing it is important, or my dying will not achieve the better life I want for her and the kids. I'm clear that me being half-living, irritable and reclusive is not in any of their interests. I'm doing harm by being this way amongst them. I prayed with a preacher for my sins, there are many, and for forgiveness of what I was going to do November 30th. I said goodbye and blessed my wife on her new journey and wished her a joyful, loving, meaningful, and purposeful life. We had a peaceful ending. And then I made a mistake in how I took my medicine. To avoid gagging or vomiting on the metallic taste of the medicine, I consumed it with something that impacted the effectiveness. Silly mistake, and I should have known better. The real issue is the 3 weeks since people that knew and was part of the day on November 30th, especially my wife, don't know how to react or engage with me. To be honest, it took me a proper week to starting thinking again. Having resolved that I'm dying, I had no future plans, thoughts, or intentions. I had nothing. They had nothing for me, as I was not supposed to be there. Given how hard it's been over 3 weeks to find connection with especially my wife again, I'm clear and resolved that I should see through what I had started and die. I can't blame my wife, as the future world I promised her after my death was compelling. Not having it now must be disappointing. What I've learned. If I've decided to die, do it, don't mess it up. It's really hard for people to adjust to you living if they were prepared that you were dying. As good as I thought it was to prepare people that I'm choosing to die, most people do not know how to respond to that scenario. Don't tell my wife that it's happening, e.g. at this time on this day. The emotional distress is too much, rather let the natural instinct and reaction be her guide. Being comfortable to die is not easy process for those that are continuing to live to accept or understand. Making a mistake and not die was not a scenario any of us were prepared for. Even if people say they don't judge, they do. Being around after mistake of not dying means you are around to be the object of their emotional distress and anger aimed at you. To be honest, that's fair. I did after all cause the state of things. Don't promise people that you've decided to live if you haven't committed to yourself. Being in limbo is hard. No one is reaching into your world to help, as you've done good job at communicating your decision. Make this in between time as short as possible. 3 weeks is too long, as nothing changed. I have before and after in my consciousness, but with nothing changed in mind or action. I'm in a world similar to being a fish out of water. I don't belong anymore. The post is to express my experience and not to gather advice or seek support in living. It's the only place I could think of sharing reflections on my journey. Thank you for this opportunity. Edit 1. The number of people responding surprised me, and out of respect I wanted to validate and engage as many replies as possible. Each of the replies took time, and I value what was expressed even if I do not fully agree. This has, however, taken substantially energy from me, and I'm exhausted. I'll not be responding further until I've recharged and taken stock of all the feedback. Thanks to all for the messages. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.